Morning all, just a little video on trench composting your food scraps. Some pros and cons. John's Veggie Garden Diary for the 18th of December 2021. So I'll just start off with a little bit of a story about how this all got started. My wife and I a few years ago decided we wanted to recycle. We saw a lot of waste, whether it was plastic or food or whatever. Plastic waste was pretty straightforward with recycling companies, but food scraps, especially with kids, it really kills me when food gets wasted. And bless my daughter, she's a bit of a waster. So I wanted a way to firstly not waste the food, and secondly, my soil often gets depleted after a growing season, and I wanted a way to replenish it. So did this a few times, did it wrong, and I've learned as I've gone along. So I hope this video helps somebody. I'm going to talk about how I actually do it, what I do, how I do it, and then there are a lot of cons and there are a lot of pros, and for me the pros far outweigh the cons. So just a little bit about how it actually works is I have these big black bins. A few years ago I bought them on special at a hardware store, drilled some holes in the side for air. I don't really know if that was necessary, but I had read that it was a good thing. And the first thing I learned about putting all my food scraps in bins is that they stink like crazy. So that is the first con. They stink like crazy. So I had to figure out how to get around that. And what I discovered, and I'm no soil scientist, but pretty much compost bins are composed of a lot of things with nitrogen in and a lot of things with carbon. And it's really the nitrogen-based things that stunk. So you need to balance it with carbon. So I'm talking now about carbon being your brown compost, your sawdust. I use toilet rolls, I use egg boxes, any brown cardboard. And when I'm talking about food scraps, it's kind of disgusting, but if you're going to do it, you might as well see it. We're talking everything from tea bags to dead flowers, chicken bones, those seeds from some kind of squash, which I'll get back to later. But I mean, it's really disgusting stuff. A lot of people say that you can't compost bones and chicken and stuff like that. Not true. It's all about the carbon to nitrogen ratio. So essentially you can compost them. I mean, if you think about our nursery sell bone meal, that's a perfect example. As I say though, the con is that they stink. And so to get around that, you need a good offset of carbon. And the second thing that I'm going to talk about is what I actually do with these things, and the second con. So what I actually do is I will take a bed like this one, for example. I've actually done it with all these beds here. Dug a trench. So I was looking for a way to stop the stink, because what I noticed is when I mixed the food scraps in with my soil, they stank to high heaven regardless of the carbon. And the reason being that it has not broken down properly. I have only got a couple of bins. They get full. I have to do something with them. So at the end of the season, I bury them whether they're composted or not. And the truth is that does stink. So I thought, how do I do this? So I read about trench composting. I wound up digging a trench, example here, about 25 to 30 centimeters deep, chucked in a bin of compost, of food scraps, essentially, because I'm going to say food scraps because it hadn't even composted yet. So chuck in a bin of food scraps and then cover it with soil. No more stink. So the great thing is you've gotten rid of the stink again. You've added mountains of nutrients, really mountains of nutrients to the soil. I mean, the one con of this is that leafy greens do not seem to like it that much. So excuse the weeds, I've been very slack. But if you look at this bed, pretty much I planted this entire bed on the 10th of August, according to my little label there with Great Lake lettuce. And obviously I have eaten some to go on my sandwiches, but generally what I've noticed is that around the middle where the bulk of the food scraps were, they have not grown. Not to say they don't grow at all. I mean, as you can see, there are lettuces growing there, but it's not something that leafy greens seem to like. I thought perhaps it was just lettuce, but I tried the same exercise with baby spinach in this bed. Now, this bed you'll see has got actual bought bark compost. I don't normally buy compost, although I may start, just because I like doing my own composting, but I had the same problem. So this bed is a bit of a disaster between me putting the seeds in higgledy-piggledy and a cat coming and pooping and distributing the seeds everywhere. That's not looking great, but my point will be valid. If you see there some baby spinach, there some baby spinach, no baby spinach in the middle. And the reason again is before I put down this bark compost, literally it was just soil, and I had put in my food scraps first, and again I had the exact same result where around the edges the baby spinach did not grow at all, and I was left with virtually an empty bed. I then went off, bought some bark compost, scattered seeds, and that's a story for another video, why it looks all higgledy-piggledy like this. But anyway, point being, if you're going to be growing leafy greens, you probably want to use very well composted compost, whether it's food scraps or anything else. My method of just chucking them in half composted is not great for leafy greens. But I did say that the pros far outweigh the cons. So let me discuss some of the pros. And the pros are that, actually before I discuss the pros, I want to discuss one more con. You'll see where I had trench composted here, a little bit of a hole in the middle. And again, I put a huge bin of food scraps in here. As they decompose, the ground literally sinks. Again, making it difficult for certain things to grow in there. So now let's get to the pros. One of the pros, which you can't see right now, is that earthworms absolutely love this method. I'm not an expert on worms, but when I started this veggie garden years ago, it was a disaster. The soil it was really bad, the state of the soil. Couldn't see an earthworm anywhere. Now, if you dig under my soil, there are mountains of earthworms. I've seen birds eating them. I've seen skinks eating them. And I really believe that's an indicator of healthy soil. So if you need earthworms, again, I'm not an expert on worm farming. In fact, I know nothing about worm farming, but I do know that my earthworms love my kitchen scraps. And my veggies love my earthworm poo. So that's something to think about. The big pro that I want to talk about is, I don't know if the right word is volunteer vegetables. So pretty much what I find happens with these food scraps is that in the same way that the leafy greens hate this method, the squash family and the tomato/potato family love this method. So when I talk about the squash family, I'm talking about gem squash, pumpkin, butternut, baby marrows, anything in the squash family just really, really love this method. And the other thing that loves this method is potatoes, tomatoes, and I'm going to show you some examples. So this tomato plant, which is hearty and healthy, literally planted itself because there were some tomato seeds in the food scraps that I chucked in here. If we go to this bed at the back, bearing in mind that I used the same method of trench composting here as I did there, but you can see the results with the leafy greens versus the squash. Pretty much what happened at the back here is I actually planted some zucchini, so you can see baby marrow, zucchini, whatever you want to call them. This plant here I actually planted all the way along here, but only one actually grew. It grew very, very well, along with another tomato plant that once again popped its head up because I had used the food scraps. So other than that, I didn't plant all this greenery around here. We have a pumpkin plant. You can see these massive leaves. The pumpkin plant planted itself down here, and I guess this can be a pro or a con, but you can't really tell what they are from the leaves all the time. I suspect that this is a gem squash. So pretty much, if I look at this bed, whether it be the one zucchini plant that I planted or the pumpkin, the gem squash and the tomato, these plants seem to absolutely love growing in food scraps. And I think that point is made further by this. This bed, I planted nothing. I mean, I'm going to step a little bit back and you can have a look, but it is not easy to get plants to grow like this. I think if you've been veggie gardening for a while, you know that it's a bit of a challenge. So these healthy plants planted themselves. I did not plant them. All I did was throw in my food scraps, did a really poor job of covering them up, and I wanted to plant, but I kept waiting to find some specific lettuce seeds that I was looking for that I couldn't find. It was like a mixed seed pack. But anyway, while I was waiting, some little plants started popping up around the edges, and it turned out that they were exceptionally happy. One grew in the corner there. This gem squash grew on the edge of the bed, and this potato plant grew on the edge. Is it the best place for a potato plant, on the edge of a bed? Probably not. Is this plant happy and healthy? It's very happy, and it's about to start getting flowers. So in summary, I'd say that if you are an exceptionally meticulous person that has to have everything grow exactly what you want, where you want, then this is maybe not the method for you. If you are not into eating squash, then this is probably not the method for you. Same would go with potatoes and tomatoes. In my house, we eat a lot of different types of squash, tomatoes, potatoes. So this method has been exceptionally good. So just a little bit about it in summary is, as I say, not great for leafy greens, but if you are into recycling and if you have got a problem replenishing your soil or you need more earthworms, if you really like eating squash, then I think this is a really great method to do. And it's far from perfect because these things are growing where they want to grow, not where I wanted them to grow. But all in all, at the end of the day, I get great veggies, and I hope that this video helps somebody. Cheers.